I will first introduce the project that we will present here. Well, the project has just started since 2 months, so we don't have final results yet, but we will try to speak about the idea of the project, and the preliminary results that we have will be presented by Alexandra. So we come from the National Research University Higher School of Economics, where we now work on a study focusing on the creative initiatives in St. Petersburg. And the idea of this project came from a recent development in big cities in Russia that Elena has mentioned earlier today. It is, I think that many of you have noticed the growing interest to cultural industries, creative industries, but also we can see that since a year or two, maybe, we have an increasing interest in urban issues and in diverse creative ways to transform the urban environment by the inhabitants themselves. And the basic concepts this project started from are the also mentioned today concepts of right to the city, and here we refer to the right to the city not as the right to use the urban space or to be in the urban space, which is also an important issue in Russia right now, since you know we have this problems of free use of urban space, as Anisia has mentioned in her presentation too. But in our project we understand the right to the city more in the David Harvey way, which is the right to transform the city and to decide what the city will look like. And the basic idea is that actually more than just two main actors, which are businesses and the state, can take part in this process of urban development and transformation. That's why we decided to focus on different initiatives of city dwellers trying to participate in this process of urban development in the situation when there are not too many channels, not too many ways of participation. Because in our Russian case, the ways to participate for the citizens in their own environment is very limited. But the second starting point is what we noticed before starting this project is that actually in our Russian cities, in St. Petersburg as well, we can see the appearance of new forms of public space. And these forms of public space are not initiated by the city administrations nor by big businesses, but they are initiated by small, more or less small communities of people who work in the sphere that we can also call creative industries or creative sphere. And here's the I'm sure this list is not full, but some of these types of the public space we mean here are the lofts, co-working, diverse multifunctional creative spaces that are also sometimes lofts, but they can also be the newly established cultural centers and so on. But we also decided to focus on the temporary initiatives that are not localized in the urban space, but still try to try to transform or modify the living environment in the city. And the actors who try to intervene in this process of urban transformation, sometimes they just don't have legitimate means or instruments of the urban transformation, so they have to find some new ways to have an impact on the urban space, to actually work with this space. And among our cases of interest are, for example, the guerrilla urban activists. I'm sure many of you have heard about the Partizanin initiative, which is active in Moscow, in St. Petersburg, and also in some other Russian cities. But in St. Petersburg, the branch is, does not really exist as a branch, but there are several artists and activists who also join this guerrilla activity. We also focus on the street artists and the artists we call socially responsible. So the people, the artists who work with different social issues and topics and try to make their work public. So they are not locking themselves within the artistic communities, and they try to go out into the city. But, and also the activists. By activists here we mean different young professionals who feel also interested in the urban issues, and they come from different disciplines and professional backgrounds, but they can also try to organize some DIY projects directed towards the urban transformation. So here's the here are some features of the topic of our initiatives of interest. What unites them all is that they represent a new actor trying to formulate, to introduce a new vision of what a comfortable urban space actually is and what it should look like. They try to really introduce some practical projects to change something in the urban environment. And I will skip the third point because we will speak about it later, but what is also important here that all these initiatives have a very dynamic and networked character. Many of the artists and the new activists are connected, so they know each other, they have experience of working on common projects, and what is also very important, as a result, they share some common ideas of the urban space, of the comfortable urban space as well. And if you've been here 2 weeks ago, our colleagues have presented the results of the network analysis that we've done, so also the very preliminary results, but still that we've done in our field. So what our research group is actually trying to do. We are trying to map the diverse initiatives and projects working with the urban issues in St. Petersburg. And we also try to focus on the biographies and networks of the activists. So not only the visions of a better city are of interest, but also the ways and trajectories of people who start to occupy themselves with these topics. And an important common feature of all these projects is that our activists and artists, they try to change the city in a creative way. They try to use art and creativity and different artistic approaches to change the city. And the idea here is that creativity becomes a resource for urban modifications. The last phrase here says that creativity can also be seen as a resource for counterpublics, and here I refer to the concept by Nancy Fraser, but also to the line that I've skipped on the previous slides, which focused on the social and political context of the process in question. I mean here that our urban activists and artists and guerrilla artists, they are all working beyond the state-funded sector, beyond the public sector. Our activists come from commercial creative industries. They can be self-organized, non-commercial initiatives, but they all do not work with the state. And the idea here is that the communication with the state is the opportunities of communication with the state are very limited or almost non-existent. So our activists, they try to use the resources they have to change the city around them without having to deal with the state. So it's very independent. These are very independent initiatives. And I call them counterpublics here, but this is just a hypothesis that they try to bring a new vision of what public space is or what urban space generally is and should be into the discourse, which is somewhat different from what they are trying to introduce. Well, here is again the short description of our creative initiatives. They are all non-governmental, and they try to modify the urban space with different means and instruments. And among our cases, case studies are the initiatives who try to work with the direct action. These are the street artists and the DIY marathon of urban activism, which has the name Сделай сам. We also included in our research some lofts, so institutionalized platforms that are not only focusing on the urban ideas and urban projects, but are very interested in transforming urban space. They host different events that focus on urban issues, like lectures, exhibitions, but we also included a very interesting case here, an educational loft, as they call themselves, which focuses on educating people how to deal with urban space and what a comfortable and a humanistic urban space actually should be. And also, as I mentioned before, the creative spaces, lofts with a very wide spectrum of activities that also host urban events and urban issues-related events. So now we will switch to Alexandra's presentation.
Okay, just a second. Yeah, this will be the continuation. Oh, sorry, can you switch off the light, please? Пожалуйста. Because forgive me, but I've done this on this like yellow background, so sorry. Yes, it's supposed to be yellow. Sorry for this. So, as Anna told, we are in the starting phase of our project. That's why maybe we'd better talk not about the results, but how we are trying to approach the creative city. How we're trying to approach the creative city, and how are we supposed to speak of the creative initiatives, the whole bunch of the variety of these creative initiatives that can be found there. And Anna told about various typizations of these creative initiatives. She told about the space localized initiatives, which have their own spaces, others who are trying to deal directly on the streets, temporary and stable, and others. So there are really numerous approaches or types or categories that we can apply, but this will be like trying to do this in front of seeing initiatives first. Well, sorry, I will reformulate. This is a bit artificial, trying to categorize initiatives without seeing them. So maybe when we try to approach the initiatives and speak of the creative city, it's better to look at the creative city itself. And where can it be done in the most evident way? Of course, on the streets of the city, where we can spot really numerous illustrations, examples, installations of the creativity that our people living or coming to our city produce. And this is a collage that can be frightening from the first sight, because it is too diverse, too colorful, and too really a bit frightening for the sociologist, which has to who has to categorize everything and to build a frame and then to build the profile, etc. But we are really trying to think of the threads of this approaches, these ways that we can by which we can come to the real essence of these initiatives. And I will try to talk about just maybe one of the possible threads that I could and we could in a group single out in this collage. These are politically engaged outdoor and activist initiatives, which means that they are really dealing in the streets. They are trying to be more provocative in terms of representation, not hiding in some places, but going outside and hitting the point, hitting the perception of everyday city dwellers. And they really engage political agenda. Well, Anna told that all of the creative initiatives try to target social and political agenda, but this maybe really do this in really most active way. So I will speak today of these kind of initiatives, and I will show some examples. Turning to my thesis, that we can now talk not maybe about the results, but about the methods, about the process of gaining data, and also coming back to the point that sociologists sometimes presuppose some categories and provide some plan for research in front of the real data itself. We try to do the contrary and to go the contrary way, not to focus on cases by taking some concrete community or some concrete loft, but on focusing on real networks that can extend, that have no physical boundaries, that have no geographical boundaries, that really sometimes have no typization boundaries, because there can be linkages between the commercial and non-commercial sector and so on. But before doing the profound social network analysis, we are trying to go from the ground using qualitative methods, having interviews, with the creative actors, and also looking at the secondary data. And what we are trying to do is a preliminary network work. This is mapping, and Anna also mentioned this as one of our first focuses. And mapping, it has really become a metaphor of everything, but what we mean here is this is a tool, a research tool that we use, and we try to ask our interviewees to paint a scheme or a map of the creative city as they have it in their minds, to show the linkages that link them to other creative city actors, to other creative groups. And doing this, we really engage a tool that allows us, in the first step, to visualize the most significant, the most up-to-date, the most activized in minds representations about the linkages, about the real network that constructs the creative city for our actors. And by comparing the pictures, which I will show you a bit further, we really can see some differences and some similarities in their views. And also, mapping, besides all, is sometimes used by the creative initiatives themselves, not initiated by the researcher, but already done by some specifically reflective creative actors. And this is also interesting to look at them, and I will show you one example of this. Another dimension, one really important point of the mapping, and maybe wider understanding, is that mapping can be done from outside, of course, by the researcher when he sees the collage on the street, yes, and when he tries to typify or to say about the situatedness and the agenda of the creative initiative. But what is really most important for us as qualitative sociologists is that mapping that is done from our inside, and when the interviewee draws us the picture, he really uses the specific nominations, some concrete definitions. What is maybe the most important for us in view of the future network analysis is the linkages and their type, how they look like, and also the significant attributes that can be, and all of these things produced by the interviewee, they can be analyzed further when we have the network and we try to think what is the sense of the linkages that are mapped in the network. And the last point that I will stress here is that the maps are really different, and when we have an interviewee or an actor, for example, who is talking about his personal experiences, his communication with other creative city actors, he will draw us a map which is a map from micro perspective, which has the self in the center of this map, and which links him or her to another actor with the linkages of friendship or of conflicts, really emotionally loaded and very relevant to his or her own experience. But sometimes we can have an actor, and we had really interviews like this, when the actor is not the sole person doing, but he is an organizer. For example, he is a creator of a festival, and in his maps we can come into the meso level of this future network, the meso level of the creative city, when we have persons and institutions also connected into this map, and this provides us with this actor institutional ties. Well, the macro level is not our case because we really speak to real people, but this can be also one of the variants of the nets, of the maps. And now I will come to what we see in the streets, to those politically engaged activists, outdoor creative initiatives. And really I will try to speak of a little bit about the mapping from outside. I mean the mapping from our experiences, from what we see on the streets. And this is one of the performances which was performed in the streets of our city near the central cathedral, and the female activist, she was like crucified on the cross, and all of you will of course recognize the dress the female actor is wearing, which links us to the Pussy Riot image. Yes, this is the time when the dialogue, the debate and the discussion was very heated about the Pussy Riot, and also this was the time when the political moods were and the political opposition were in really strong mode. Yes, so when seeing a picture like this, one can really say about the type of the creative initiative, about the creative practice and how can it be described, about the situatedness. These are real central symbolic buildings or places, and of course about the agenda, which is not only linked to Pussy Riot, but of course is linked in wider extent to position to political official decision. What is interesting about this is that this is really direct action. This is the original performance in original meaning, when the body is put and the bodily experience is staged in front of the eyes of people who are not expecting to see this on the streets. And though I don't know the charismatic example of another performance in this line, in this Pussy Riot line, the first picture, especially the young man with the sewed up mouth, who also speaks of the political agenda. This is also the performance carried with like bodily performance, with the bodily experience of torture or pain, and the agenda is alike. And the picture below is the action which has been done recently, and this is the thing that I'm really interested in, that the political agenda is here. It hasn't gone anywhere. Well, the topic has changed, but again the young man speaks about the oppression of the people by the law, which is symbolized by this wire, metal wire, which hits his naked body. Another example of the initiative of a bit of different type is the project, the ad-busting project. The ad-busting, those people who try to deconstruct the ads which we see in the streets. And this art intervention, not the performance, but intervention, it's anonymous, it's made up with some deconstruction of the image, of the existing image of the advertisement, or the painted canvas which is put into the central space of the manege. But again, the agenda is pretty much the same, though the ad-busting project has another additional focus, because they are really struggling against the culture of consumption, not directly maybe against the political laws and political agenda and decisions, but in a wider sense. That's why they deconstruct the ads. But the topic of Pussy Riot, you see, is like a very fruitful one for all of them. And this is quite another type of creative initiative, which themselves call themselves Laboratory of Poetic Actionism. They do not make performances. What they do make is transferring the verse, the lines, poetic lines, into another media, onto the city walls or into the internet. But here I show you the first example, and also the flag, which is on the top, was created maybe in a wider group, in a group wider than the laboratory itself, but again it was created by the head of this laboratory. So you see these are the real mottos that are used in political actions, and not only in anonymous interventions, but also in actions where the people are physically present. And the situatedness of their creative products is quite diverse. These are not only central public places, which are very important for those who are doing performances, because they need attention of publics, but this can be, well, not even very seen and noticed walls like graffiti, but in another sense, in poetic sense, in sense of using language. And coming to the maps, but this is maybe the most interesting part, but okay. I will show you the maps, and that will be it. So coming to the maps that are interpersonal map, micro level maps, so the maps that are showing interpersonal linkages. You see the word "я", me, in the center. What we can see from these maps is the type of the linkages, as I told you earlier. We can see, like, for example, in this map, a perfect triangle which links different myself and different groups, which are really political ones, because there is the artistic community of which the guys told in previous presentation, the political one. Что делать? There are some political parties, there are politically oriented movements. This is the map that was done by the female performer whom you saw on the photo. This is another map which has been done by another performer, the other one, the young man, and here is here we can spot a bit other thing. As far as the young man has background, he is a professional artist. He mentions professional artistic communities, except for mentioning those political communities that he is linked, or political actors or leftist intellectuals. So this is another thing that can be spotted. And maybe the most reflective and one of the most diverse maps here is the map which has been done by the leader of the Adbusting project, and here I think of course the color is not very well spotted, but you can believe me that he relates himself not only to the leftist intellectual agenda, but what is more interesting, he relates himself to other groups. This map is really the most maybe multidisciplinary in this way, because he relates himself to scientific groups, to the universities, to the professional artistic groups, and also also we can spot here different institutions, like as I said, universities, contemporary art institutions, political parties, NGOs, and also we can see that in his understanding the structure of these external references, it is rather structurized. Yes, it is like a real network done by, visualized by or by something, but really drawn by an activist himself. Okay, so bit of little conclusions because I have no time left at all. Sorry. I would say a bit of conclusion about this type of creative initiative. Really, it is very interesting why and in what context and for what reasons the politically engaged activist initiatives are booming, and there is a real variety of it. Of course, this is linked to the context of the oppositional movement, but maybe this is not only the case, because there are also creative initiatives which are linked to the rightist agenda, not only the leftist or something. And this is a good, interesting question to consider. The networks that are, the maps of the linkages that are created, they have, they put, the question of boundaries. So really there are no geographical boundaries or political boundaries, for example, for the creator of the festival of this festival of the street art, who collected all of the political variety, all of the groups who have political variety in their agendas all together, and there is no even border between the commercial or oriented towards art production or oriented towards discourse production groups, because they are also linked. So this is what we can gain from the maps and what we can then put into our network analysis to gain the view of the creative city initiatives. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.